Hey everyone, hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the first couple of chapters in the Vinland Saga, and I'm really excited to get into it with you today. I feel like I don't know, I feel very inarticulate today, so please forgive. If you're new to my channel, then hi, I'm Shelly. I really love books and reading, and I have been reviewing some manga on my channel, primarily One Piece. And I was encouraged by a ton of you all or a ton of people. I don't know if you all are here. Maybe y'all are here. I don't know. But I was encouraged to read Vinland Saga, and I did start it, and I wanted to just kind of give you some initial thoughts about it today. So, if you're new and you like the vibe, I would encourage you to subscribe and stick around. And without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. Vinland Saga opens in medias res, so it starts off feeling like there's a lot of moving parts, that things are already going down, and we don't know who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. I mean, we can maybe posit from the drawings and from the clues who's who and all of that, but we don't really know what's happening. And then there's a conversation between what I'm assuming is going to be our main character, Thorfinn, and Askeladd. And Thorfinn is saying, you know what I want, Askeladd. And I'm like, I don't know what you want. And Askeladd says, yeah, well, if that's what you want, boy, I'll need you to bring me the head of the commander. And also there's this, there's a bit of levity, there's dying and fighting, and basically what's happening is there's an attack going on a city whose back end of the city is on a river and whose front end is being attacked by what I'm guessing are Vikings. And so Askeladd is one of the attackers on the outside of this village, trying to get spoils in the village, and Thorfinn is with Askeladd in some way. And so Askeladd says, he wants the head of the commander, if that's what the boy wants. And we're like, well, what does the boy want? I don't know what the boy wants. And so Thorfinn comes in, and he is in negotiations with, like, the king or the leader of this village that the Vikings are going to attack. And again, there's this sort of levity, like there's these facial expressions from this leader, and he's just like, when he's eating, he's got his little eye is like curious, and he doesn't really sort of believe certain things. I don't know, he's very skeptical about the negotiations, but what I loved and what stood out to me were like his facial features and his character design. And so he looks just teeny tiny. He's like a squat little man, very wide, and he's the only one eating at this table, and it's just this giving this sense of like pompousness, which is, I found kind of funny, especially since the facial expressions were so well rendered that they were sort of like incredulous, and I think incredulous is probably the best. He's like, whatever, like, sure, you can attack us kind of thing, but like, I don't really believe that that's what's going to happen. And the expressions on everyone's faces were great, especially even to like this woman giving him a massage, giving this leader of this village a massage, and she's like, oh, this is awful. She's like on the struggle bus trying to give him a massage, and it just added to like the humor and like the tone of the overall idea of the story. The whole thing, the way that they end up attacking this village is like, well, okay, let me back up. For a minute there in Vinland Saga, in these first few pages, I was like, are we going to get magical realism? Because it looks like there is a dragon in the forest. And, these soldiers were like, oh my gosh, there's a dragon. Like, what in the world? And I was like, oh my gosh, there is a dragon. What in the world? And we realized that part of the strategy was that men are carrying the boats, and the boats have the face of a dragon on there. Yes, Bubba?
Behold, the king took it.
What we realized is that, yeah, so these men are carrying the boats through the forest, and the front of the boats are carved with a dragon, and so it looks like the dragons are like inside of the forest. So I'm sure if I was somebody living back then, that I would be like, oh my gosh, why is there a dragon in the forest? But really they're just doing this absurd thing of carrying these boats in through the forest in order to have a sort of sneak attack on this village and to gain the upper hand. And meanwhile, it's having also this effect of sort of tricking these soldiers who are supposed to be on watch by, you know, tricking them thinking that this mystical thing is happening. And so it's a really fantastic, it was a fantastic like surprise tactic to see that they're not using the boats in the water, but that they're being carried through the forest. And the smug look on Askeladd's face is just epic. It's so good. And meanwhile, we find out that Thorfinn has this agility, this speed. Everyone's like, he's just a kid, and which I actually thought was hilarious because my younger son, we would call him a baby. We would be like, come here, baby, and he's like, I'm not a baby, I'm just a kid. And so I was like, oh my gosh, because it just reminded me so much of that. The soldiers were like, well, he's just a kid, and he ends up indeed getting the head of the captain, and everybody is sort of like baffled again by his speed and agility and the fact that he's so young. And meanwhile, they did sort of get the sneak attack. They were able to come in carrying the boats, get all of their plunder, and leave on the river, which was very surprising. And then what do you find out? Because this whole time I'm like, well, what did Thorfinn want? And he basically says, I, Thorfinn, son of Thor's warrior of Iceland, upon my father's blade do seek a duel with Askeladd to avenge my father's death. I'm like, oh, okay, so he has some beef with Askeladd, I'm guessing. So that's kind of like the opening chapter. And the reason why I didn't say this at the beginning, which I probably should have. The reason why I'm reviewing these two chapters rather than like a whole chunk is because, y'all, I did something I never do. I was on Reddit. I was reading on Reddit, and there was somebody that said that the prologue is 2 chapters, and I was like, I could do 2 chapters. I could do 2 chapters, and then I will do, I think I'll do 3 through 17 next. That's like the next video. So, anyways, so the Vikings end up coming home to Denmark in the Jutland Peninsula of the village of the feudal Lord Gorm. So they get home essentially, and they have all this stuff, and it shows a different side because the very first chapter there was like killing and eyeballs being popped out, and there was like trickery going on. And again, I feel like there is such a good mix of humor and levity with the seriousness of war and fighting, and so I really appreciated that. And a lot of that is conveyed in like the smirks and the facial expressions and the the questioning. Like the facial expressions are fantastic. You know, they come home, we get to know a few more characters, primarily the uncle of Askeladd, who is counting up all the money and is very into money. He also has this slave, this female slave called Hordaland, and the interesting thing about her is that she came from nobility but then was sold into slavery, so she has this background of not really of having this life of ease, and then now she's at a station that is far lower than I think she ever would have expected, and so she's actually not good at her job. She's not good at like her tasks. And that really annoys the uncle. Well, Askeladd is really interesting because he was like, my uncle doesn't understand that there's a trick to manipulating every human being. And so I think Askeladd is the thinker of this group, that he has a way with people. And then we realize that Thorfinn has this thing against Askeladd because Askeladd took Thorfinn hostage, and then Askeladd decided to spare Thorfinn's life, but upon Thorfinn's father's death. And I was like, interesting. And so they end up fighting, and everybody is he's moving with a lot of again agility and speed, and he's actually I should say Thorfinn is, he's like on the attack, and essentially he seems like he's the one that has the upper hand until his emotions get the best of him, and then Askeladd just swoops in and like beats Thorfinn at this duel that Thorfinn wanted, and you get the sense that Askeladd is kind of almost what feels like his dad, Thorfinn's dad, the replacement father that he doesn't have, because Askeladd is, I don't know, he's treating the duel and with deference, and he's not emotionally involved in this duel, and he also was like saying, you know, you've grown a lot. You've grown a lot, Thorfinn, since the last time I've seen you. You've really gained a lot of skill. And so you get this sense that they have this quite long history. So while everyone's partying and having a good time, Askeladd ends up having a conversation with somebody in the bar, and he was saying, like, you know, Thorfinn could probably kill you at any time. Why challenge you to this public duel? Why go through all the steps when he could, you know, essentially take your life at any point, because you all are sailing together and warring together. Like, he has all these opportunities, and why doesn't he ever take them? And Askeladd basically says that would not satisfy Thorfinn. He wants to win an honest man-to-man duel. He's bound by his pride and his own past. And so it was interesting, because he's, you know, you get this sense, which I've seen in One Piece by Aichiro Oda, that the Japanese and this culture is really all about honorability and pride, and doing things in the right way, and fighting a battle that is honest and fair. And I thought that was fantastic. Meanwhile, it kind of switches from that scene, this conversation, to the uncle, who I don't like. He starts to, you know, beat his slave for her not being a good slave. And she ends up sending, you know, taking food out to Thorfinn, who's moping in this boat. And actually, interestingly, while he's in this boat, Thorfinn ends up seeing images of his father, and what I imagine is an imaginary conversation with his father. And you know, his father, this imaginary ghostly father, ends up comforting Thorfinn, which I thought was really precious. And then this girl, I hope she ends up playing a bigger part. I really, 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 really do, because I do love a good love story or a good friendship story. And they end up having a conversation. The conversation goes like this. She says, this slave says, "It's strange, I would have thought we were more similar." She thinks that she and Thorfinn are more similar. And Thorfinn responds with, I have nothing in common with you. I wouldn't know how a slave thinks. If I were you, I'd kill Gorm and run. And I'd kill any man who followed me." And then she's like, "How awful. I couldn't kill." And then he's like, "Then enjoy a life as a slave. It's your choice." And that's kind of how it ends. So they have this banter. I think she shows a lot of compassion towards Thorfinn, and he kind of shows a lot of brusqueness back. But I feel like that's the seeds of possible coming to something else, you know? Like, we might be leading somewhere. So again, this is a short one to introduce that I am going to be reviewing this series. I'm going to be talking about this series. Let me know your thoughts. If you have good ways to break up the series, that would be helpful. I am going to have to buy the volumes, but I also have them on an Amazon wish list in case if you're feeling generous and want to buy a volume for me. That would be wonderful. Yeah, but I'm excited for this. This is great. Anyways, I'm gonna go. I've already enjoyed my time thus far, and yeah, so thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all in